from the latest Action Network podcast.
We'll start just very basic. Tell us about, early money and subsequent line moves at your shop that you've seen in the two college football playoff semifinal games.
In the semifinals, in these playoff games, actually, there is public money. I mean, you're right. In general, only sharps usually bet early. But on events that are this high profile, like these two college football playoff semifinal games, the public's already weighing in on these games. Everybody's on Clemson and everybody's on LSU. Not a big surprise there. We'll need the two dogs pretty big in these games.
Do you envision yourself ever getting to a flat 14? And will anyone besides sharps bet the under in either one of these games?
Everybody's betting the under in the Peach Bowl here. Actually, we were dealing it at an intentionally high number. We actually like the over here. So, in the totals market, for the most part, at this point, it's only arbitrage players, guys just playing differences from our book to another book. But in the side market, you're getting a lot of public action on both of these games. Do I think we'll get to 14? That's a good question. It's something we've already talked about. I don't know. I'm going to say no. I don't. 14 just seems so high to me. I mean, our power rating number on this game was more like LSU 8.5 or 9. I know the number got very inflated because LSU demolished Georgia on Saturday in a game that all of us at the book loved Georgia in that game, by the way. That was a great call. Oklahoma really struggled. I thought they were very lucky to beat Baylor. I think they've been lucky to win 4 or 5 games in the last 6 weeks or so. So Oklahoma kind of sputtering along. LSU looks unbeatable. This number is already, in my opinion, very inflated at 13. I don't think it'll get all the way to 14.
I like Oklahoma too at 13 and a half, but I'm waiting to see if a 14 ever pops. So I imagine if you do ever get to 14, it'll get hit immediately and come back down. Colin, you want to ask a question about the Ohio State Clemson game?
Yeah, I was gonna follow up and say there have been a couple 14s that showed in the market, and those were scooped immediately. It flashed in the New York Minute. So, in the number, and I agree with John that, I mean, between the overtime game with Oklahoma in the Big 12 and what LSU did to Georgia, Georgia left so many points on the table in the first half. I'm not really sure the books are going to stop taking money on LSU because not everybody has a power rating like the Westgate. Not everybody has a power rating like us. They could care less that we make this game 8.5. And I just, I don't know if that number is ever going to come down for LSU unless some large money comes in on Oklahoma at some point. But John, offering live betting, Stuck and I talk about this all the time. Why take an Oklahoma 13 pregame when this is like the semifinal last year where Kyler Murray got down by 21, 28 points and there was a live number of 21 to 28. And this Oklahoma offense, if they don't turn the ball over, they can cover any live number, like say over 17 or 21 points. Do you feel like that's probably the same situation which happens in this game again?
I think that's a very good point. I know Alabama was up 21-0 at the end of the first quarter in the Orange Bowl last year. And we could see something like that here. Like if you're LSU and you get out to a really big lead, let's say you're up by 3 or 4 touchdowns, you got to kind of take your foot off the gas. You've got a national championship game to then start preparing for, and it could allow Oklahoma to get back into the game, score some late touchdowns, get inside that big number. But yeah, you're probably right. You probably will be able to get more than 13 on the in game. It's just a dangerous game to play. What if Oklahoma goes down the field and scores a touchdown right away?
Yeah.
I mean, if you like Oklahoma, you should bet them before the game. But I do agree with your overall point. You probably will be able to get something better at some point during the end game.
We need some props on the board at the Westgate for how many turnovers Jalen Hurts is going to have and a bonus factor for how many turnovers he has in the red zone. Yeah, inside the red zone.
You guys think that Jalen Hurts has had the most interesting career in college football history? I was talking to a buddy of mine about this. This guy started in the Iron Bowl, the Red River Shootout. He started in Bedlam. He won an SEC championship game, a Big 12 championship game. Now he's playing in the college football playoff for a different team. I mean, who's played in more big games than Jalen Hurts?
If there's one guy that's not going to be afraid of the moment, you're right. It's Hurts.
Yeah. The only thing this guy is missing is a 3 a.m. Hawaii game. If we could get that on Jalen Hurts' resume, we'd be good. Switching over to the Fiesta Bowl, where I'm sure Ohio State is reminded every day that they were there 3 years ago and got blown out 31-0. Westgate is one of the only books that has Clemson minus 2.5. Does that just indicate that you guys need Ohio State money, or is it just a stance that you guys are taking saying we like Clemson at this number a lot?
Well, we actually opened Ohio State a 1-point favorite in this game because our power rating numbers, Ohio State's been the number one team in the country since like week 2 or 3. I mean, it's been a long time. I know Clemson looked very good in the ACC championship game, but I think people might be losing sight a little bit of how good Ohio State is. I mean, I know they struggled against Wisconsin, but they went through a Big Ten that's much better than the ACC, and they basically dominated every game they played. I think people might be losing sight of that a little bit, but look, everybody's betting Clemson here, and we think there's a chance this game is going to close higher than this. That's why you see us at a little bit of a higher number. The key to this whole industry is not, I know everybody likes to talk about odds making and what the opening numbers are. That's not what's important. What's important is being at the closing number before everybody else. Getting to the right number, the closing number first, that's everything. That's the most important part of this game from our side of the counter. And we do think there's a chance this thing might close a little bit higher with everybody betting Clemson. You got to consider, too, think of how many LSU-Clemson parlays there's going to be that day. And if LSU covers the first game, everything's going to roll to Clemson in the second game. You just mentioned that game 3 years ago. Everybody bet Clemson in that game like crazy. We got killed on that game. And we're thinking that we might get similar action this year.
The Clemson perception is just crazy to me that we've liked Clemson all year, just like Ohio State. But everyone went from, Clemson, they haven't played anybody, to then all of a sudden, all right, they're this good, they're beating Ohio State, when really they still haven't played anybody. But the perception flip, just because of a number of blowouts and covers, has been crazy to me.
It's like you kind of have to protect yourself on the money line too, because I know once I land in Vegas and all my apps start working, which I love the Westgate. For those of you guys listening, Westgate is one of the few Vegas apps where whether you're in state or not, you can check the odds from anywhere in the nation as long as you have their app. So huge shout out for Westgate for that. But when I land in Vegas, the first thing I'm doing on spreads that are like 1 and 2 is I'll just start looking at money line, because I don't want to mess with points. It doesn't matter what sport, if it's college basketball or if it's college football. If it's a 1.5 or a 1 and I can find a really cheap, minus 125 money line, you guys have to protect yourself on that with Clemson too, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that especially in the money line parlay markets, there's going to be so many money line parlays that week of like all the favorites going to LSU and Clemson. We're going to need Ohio State pretty big in that game, I think. But we win a ton on Clemson in the future book. We've seen this coming pretty much the whole way. You guys just mentioned the Clemson schedule. You guys are absolutely right. I mean, we knew they were going to be in the college football playoff basically like in the summer. So we really wanted to make sure we were in a good position on them in the future book, and we've structured it that way.
So let's switch topics here. As somebody that's been running to the Westgate for the last 18 months and throwing as much money as I had spare on me, free money, to you guys, donating to you guys on Trevor Lawrence 2 years in a row for the Heisman. By the way, I'll be back for Trevor Lawrence next year, whatever you guys put him up. Where do you guys had a 300-1. When he took over for Kelly Bryant, it was a 300-1. And I said, oh no, we're going to have to get some money down here just because of my love for this kid. Let's see, where does the book fall on the decision for Joe Burrow to win the Heisman this weekend?
Well, first of all, I think you're absolutely right about Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is already better than about a dozen starting NFL quarterbacks, and it's a complete joke that he has to go back to Clemson next year when he would be the first overall pick in the draft. I mean, I'm a longtime Redskins fan. I've said the best thing the Redskins can do is hire Hugh Jackson, go 0-16 next year, and then draft Lawrence with the first pick in 2021. It's a better plan than anything they got going on. I'll tell you that much. No, to answer your question, we're going to get absolutely killed on Joe Burrow, guys. We had him at 200-1. And we took 11 tickets at 200-1. One guy's got $150 to win $30,000. Two other guys got $100 each to win $20,000. It's a pretty big loss for us. And then there were people betting him throughout the season, of course.
And there's no hedge, too. It's not like they have to hedge because it's pretty much known that he's going to win.
He should get every first-place vote. How could you even vote for somebody else? Not only has he been playing so great, but Hurts and Fields and those guys, they really haven't been that great down the stretch. So it shouldn't even be a question. He should get every first-place vote.
And I think I've seen some props up about, how many votes exactly will he get. I would take the over on anything that's posted out there.
Sure.
And so this is, it's a good question for how do you guys, when you have a 200-1, is it based upon how much the ticket can actually win? When do you start dropping that number? Is it respected money? Is it the size of a ticket that would take a 200-1? When you say you have 11 tickets on it, what was the trigger to maybe start dropping it and saying, okay, well, we got to think about what we've got here?
It's all about the liability. We took a bunch of bets on Mitchell Trubisky to win the NFL MVP, which we laughed at, but we still had to lower the number, guys, because you can't – look, our job here is to protect the book. Ultimately, that's our number one responsibility is to protect the house. We can't allow this book to lose some astronomical amount of money. None of us thought Joe Burrow was going to win the Heisman. That's why we opened it at 200-1. But there was a point where our liability got so big into the six-figure range – we had to lower them. We ended up going to 40-1 in July. And then obviously when the season started, we just had to keep lowering and lowering because the kid just kept playing so well. But I give credit to the people that bet him, of course, but it wasn't a guy that was even on my radar as a Heisman Trophy winner back in the summer.
Right. We're all going to have to pay attention to who hires a passing game coordinator from the NFL now. Switching over to there was a prop that just dominated the summer conversation, which, I looked at the prop and I said, it's priced correctly. I'm not going to get involved with it. But what I do want to buy is Alabama to not make the playoff. So when I came to town, that's all I was looking for was Alabama to not make the playoff instead of the prop of Alabama and Clemson versus the field for the national championship. Alabama's out of it. Clemson is still the one running with that, but you have a lot of liability on people that came in and said, oh, yeah, Alabama, Clemson for the national title.
Yeah, actually, we win a lot on the Alabama-Clemson side right now. We took a lot of field bets there in the summer. I mean, it looks like we took well into five figures on the field at plus 150 and plus 160. We took some big bets at like minus 180, minus 170, minus 160 on the Alabama-Clemson side. So really good two-way action there, but we actually win on Alabama-Clemson and lose on the field. So really not in a great position there with Alabama not getting into the playoff. But I thought it was a great prop, and we'll probably look to do something similar next year. Although I guess next year it's just going to be like all Clemson. I mean, Clemson's bringing like all these kids back, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I've never understood anybody taking minus 180 or bigger on a prop like this when there's going to be a money line on a national championship game. It's like, why would you lock up that kind of money on minus 180? So
I guess everybody at that time was thinking it was going to be Alabama, Clemson in the championship game.
That's fair.
But yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Fun prop though, and we'll revisit it next year. I mean, Alabama, I'm going to go out on a limb here, guys. They're probably going to be pretty competitive next season. So maybe we could just do Alabama, Clemson again.
No, they should be pretty good. You mentioned this earlier about your liability, and you guys will be winners on Clemson. Do you want to just run through quickly what happens if the other teams win, and are you a big loser if one of the other trios wins the national championship?
Yeah, we're a big loser on Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a pretty big loss for us here. We're a small loser to LSU. We win a good number on Ohio State, and we really clean up on Clemson. Clemson is the home run hit for us here. Oklahoma's a big loser, but it's hard to picture any team winning a combination of two games against two of those three other teams, talking about LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson. To string together two wins against those teams just doesn't seem possible to me.
Yeah, and especially beating LSU. If LSU makes the national championship game, they're going to be playing it down in New Orleans. That's going to be that's going to be, I don't care what you say about home field and being neutral. That's not going to be a neutral site game, I would think.
No.
There was a robust number for props for Clemson and Alabama last year when Stuck and I flew in for the national championship. This is why the Westgate is like the greatest book to ever watch a big-time game. Is there going to be NFL-style offerings on props this year for this year's national title game? Because I know last year I was cashing Trevor over 2 TDs, ETN props, all kinds of stuff.
We did a contest. It was us and Cheetah. We did a contest with each other where you picked your 10 favorite props for 500 each, and then whoever comes out on top, takes some of the pot. So it creates so much fun in so many different ways.
Yeah, we'll definitely have a huge prop menu for the national championship game. I mean, really, regardless of the matchup, you're going to have two high-powered teams, which is good for props. See, when you do these prop numbers, you always want it to be like a crazy. We don't want it to be a high-scoring game because then we get killed on the props because the public bets everything over. But having these really high-powered offenses does make doing prop numbers more fun and I think a little bit more interesting. And regardless of what the matchup is, we'll have a nice big menu of props again this year.
Thanks as always for your time and valuable insight.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks, John. Cheers, brother.